And open with me to Matthew chapter 6, looking at verses 19 through 24. That's Matthew 6. Since I finished school in May, I've been trying to take my health a little bit more seriously. Being in school was always my excuse of not really worrying about that at the time. You've heard of the freshman 15. I put on the dissertation 30. And so I've been working on that during the summer. I've been eating better, been exercising regularly. I've been really focusing on trying to get my sleep good. I mean, it's almost become like an obsession. Meg would call it an obsession based off of how many products I've ordered off of Amazon. All the little gadgets and gizmos that supposedly I've tried them all now at this point, like the crazy one that holds your tongue out of your mouth while you're asleep. So if you have questions, I can tell you if they work or not, okay? But the reason I've been kind of obsessing about the sleep thing is because your sleep health is connected to a lot of different aspects of your health in general, including, and this is important, your heart health. And for the men in my family, that's something that I need to be thinking about, taking seriously. And so I have been focused on that, dedicated to that, setting my attention on my physical heart health. Well, in the text that we're studying this morning, Jesus wants us to consider not our physical heart health, but our spiritual heart health. And this is an incredibly important topic. I mean, both of these topics are important. Your physical heart health might make the difference between living to 60, 80, or 100, but your spiritual heart health, it doesn't just matter for 20, 40, 60 years. It matters for all of eternity. As we've been going throughout this year, we have every so often paused from our regular study to look at this topic of simple obedience. And the reason we've called it simple obedience is we've hit on subjects that are not real complicated, not hard to understand, but they do require us to step up and actually do them. And so we've studied service, and we've studied spiritual growth, and we've studied sharing the gospel. And today we are going to look at giving. Again, a topic that's not difficult to understand. What Jesus has to say about giving is pretty clear in the Bible, but it can be hard to do, hard to put into practice. But we are Christ's followers, his disciples. We have decided to follow him with all of our lives, and that means that when he commands, we obey. And so looking at this topic of obedience, what Jesus is going to help us, being obedient to giving, what Jesus is going to help us to see and understand is that our view of our money, our finances, is intimately connected to the spiritual condition of our hearts. That, as I said before, the reason I want to focus on having the right kind of sleep is so that my heart is healthy. Well, what Jesus is going to say is you need to focus on having the right attitude toward giving, because that will influence the health of your spiritual heart. And so turn with me now to verse 19. Jesus said, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth." Well, why not, Jesus? Because on earth there is moth and rust which can destroy those treasures. And there are thieves who can break in and steal those treasures. Meaning, we should not make the focus and the intention of our lives something that is temporary, impermanent, something that can be easily destroyed or stolen. This would be foolish whenever we realize we have the opportunity to lay up a very different kind of treasure. Verse 20, "Instead, we should lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven." Well, why is that? Because in heaven, there's neither moth nor rust to destroy that treasure. There are no thieves to break in and steal that treasure. Given the opportunity to establish temporary treasure versus eternal treasure, one of those treasures is much wiser to give the focus and attention of our lives. We've been studying this concept the last couple of weeks, really, in the Gospel of Mark, learning about the opportunities we have to gain heavenly or eternal reward. I can give you an example of why this mindset, this focus would be a much wiser way to spend our lives. Let's say I'm going to give you either $1 million or $1,000, okay? But here's the deal. You only get to keep the $1 million for 5 minutes. That's it. Whatever you can do with it for 5 minutes, you get 5 minutes. But I'll give you $1,000, you get to keep it forever, rest of your life, okay? Well, you're going to think at first, well, it's $1 million. Wait a minute, what can I do with $1 million in 5 minutes? I wouldn't even have time to spend it. It's going to be gone so quickly. It would be foolish to set my hopes and my attention on the temporary thing that is certainly going to pass away. Well, this is the opportunity we have in this life. I mean, it might seem like building up earthly treasure is wise, but because, well, we're not here for 5 minutes, right? We're here for hopefully much longer than 5 minutes. But 60, 80, 100 years in light of eternity is the blink of an eye. It's a drop in the ocean. It's nothing. And so it would be incredibly foolish for us to set the focus and intention of our lives on the temporary when we have the opportunity to store up the eternal. And so Jesus has taught us this truth when it comes to how we lead, when it comes to our pride or our humility through our willingness to serve. But as we look at this text this morning, this truth also applies to how we manage our finances as well. In other words, the way that we manage our finances has an influence, an effect over what reward we receive in heaven. And so, how can we do this well, Jesus? How can we be wise with how we manage our finances? How can we make sure that our hearts are set on the eternal and not on the temporary? This is what he tells us in verse 21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is such a short phrase, but it has so much depth and so much meaning. Now, if you're like me and you've heard this passage preached before, what I've most commonly heard is that this is supposed to be an identifier for you. It shows you what you're passionate about. It shows you what you care about if you look at how you invest your money. And that's absolutely true. It's a pretty obvious way to see what you care about if you are spending your treasure on that thing. But I believe that more than just identifying the focus of our hearts, Jesus intends for this truth also to help to correct the focus of our hearts. In other words, what this phrase tells us is that we have an opportunity. We can put your treasure where you want your heart to be. Put your treasure where you want your heart to be. Meaning your treasure does not just identify where your heart is, but if you change the location of your treasure, your heart is going to follow. Because where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Whenever I was a youth pastor in Louisiana, the senior pastor at the church, he was invited to come and be on the executive board of Louisiana College, which is a small Baptist school in Louisiana. And he accepted that invitation, and so he's part of the team that's developing the vision and the direction for this school. And he told me, he said, I'm going to have to, if I'm going to be honest, I'm going to have to start giving money to this school. I'm like, well, why? Why do you need to do that? Well, he didn't really have any kind of a relationship with that school. He wasn't an alum. He didn't have kids that went there. He didn't have a lot of interaction with it. And he said, to be honest, I just don't care that much about this school. I'm not that invested in what's going to happen or how are they going to be successful. And he said, I know because of this truth that Jesus told us that if I begin to donate money to this school, my heart is going to follow my treasure. I'm going to be a better board member because I actually care intimately about this school and what's going to happen. And he said, and I know that one of the ways I can begin to love this school is if I would invest my treasure in it. Because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So there are a lot of different reasons biblically why we should tithe, why we should give money, and they're all important. We are commanded by God, right? We can demonstrate our gratitude and our appreciation. We can grow in our faith. We can demonstrate our affection. We can open the windows of heaven for blessing. But what Jesus is telling us in this text is the reason we should give is it's not a guilt trip, but instead it is an opportunity. Do you want to care more about Christ's kingdom? One of the ways you can guarantee that you will care more about Christ's kingdom is if you invest your treasure in it. Because your heart will follow your treasure. You can say, well, my heart isn't there now. I don't want to invest my treasure. There you go. There's the solution. Put your treasure there, and your heart is going to follow. That as we think about when we were talking about heart health earlier, this is almost like your spiritual cardiovascular exercise. This is a chance to make your spiritual heart more healthy when you intentionally put your treasure in things that God cares about. I used to hate running. I was a baseball player. I didn't really understand the point of it. All you have to do is be able to run 360 feet. That's it. That's as far as you ever have to run in baseball. So if you can do that, you're good. Meg and I, she was a soccer player, and we were recently comparing what the preseason training for baseball compared to the preseason training for soccer. They were very different. There was a lot more running for soccer. But recently, I've been trying to run more often. I've been enjoying it more than I ever have, and I have seen an improvement in my cardiovascular strength. Okay? So what you have here in this truth that Jesus just gave us is a chance to take your spiritual heart on a jog. It's to make it stronger. And here's how you do it. Put your treasure in the things that God cares about. And then you will begin to care about the things that God cares about. We have lots of different spiritual disciplines, lots of different opportunities for growing holy hungers, growing holy desires, but this is one that Jesus gave us. Very clear, very simple. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Put your treasure in God's kingdom, your heart is going to follow. This is an incredible opportunity that He gave us. So if you want to be more passionate about His kingdom, that's one way to do it. If you want to be more passionate about your church's vision, well, what's one way that you could be more passionate about the vision of your church? Would be to invest your treasure into the vision of your church. We have an incredible opportunity before us at EBC. I'll give you a little bit of an update. No firm numbers yet, but we endeavored to renovate our worship center. There's a couple little odds and ends to button up. Again, the journey across is coming back. We're working on it, okay? And so we haven't spent every last dollar from the money that we raised yet, but here's the thing. We raised more money than we asked for. That's a good problem to have. And then we spent less money than we planned to spend. Those are two great problems to have, which means in our facilities savings budget, we have a significant sum left over. Now, again, numbers aren't final, nothing's completely finished, but as long as nothing drastic changes, if we continue to pay our regular monthly mortgage and nothing big changes on that savings budget, we should be very close, if not debt-free, by the end of the year. Which is amazing. That is God blessing us, taking care of us, providing everything we need. He's promised to do that. If we seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, then He will provide everything that we need, and He's done that. But that also frees us up for changing the focus in the direction, the vision of the church. We won't have a banknote to worry about turn of the year anymore, unless something crazy happens, okay? And so we need to be thinking about what is our next step, what is our next ministry endeavor, how can we begin to invest our treasure a little bit differently in ministry dollars, in ministry plans. And I believe that we've been discussing as a ministry staff, as a SLT, as a leadership, and we've been praying about it, and we've been evaluating what is our community like, what does our community need, and I believe that God is leading us at EBC to begin a sports ministry. That's for several different reasons. I mean, one of them is that we have the land. We have about 17 acres here at EBC, and we're only using not even half of them. And so if God has given us that resource, it's not for no reason. It's so that we would leverage that resource for the kingdom. So we have the space to do it. And in the community, we see an incredible need. This last season, there were 900 kids in Little League sharing 10 ball fields. 4 of those ball fields were in Garden City, so Crestview has 6 fields. All right? This meant that a lot of those elementary age kids were playing baseball until 9 o'clock at night on school days because there just aren't enough fields. And so if we were to develop ball fields on the back of our property and to partner with the city in the spring and maybe do some camps in the summertime and then do a Christian league in the fall, we would provide we'd meet an incredible need for our community. But here's the thing, we're not that into baseball, okay? It's not that exciting that kids could go to bed earlier. What would be exciting would be that baseball and other sports would be the avenue into these people's lives. We would have the chance to share the gospel with them, for them to know where our facility is, to have us pray for them, to know, hey, that's where I can go for prayer. That's where I can go for spiritual guidance. I moved to Crestview to be a pastor at a church, obviously. And so you're probably not surprised to find out that a large percentage of the people I know are Christians, church people. I got to assistant coach a Little League team this last season, and to be honest with you, that was my most regular interaction with non-church people since I've been at Crestview. And I got to hear Jordan Barnard share the gospel every single game when he prayed at the end of the game. And I got to see how we were able to build those relationships and get to know people. And even we practiced on our property here, and people got to know where EBC is. And for me, that was just a glimpse into an incredible opportunity for God's kingdom that can happen through sports ministry. And so I believe that is the vision and the direction that God is calling us to. I believe it's going to be a great opportunity. And here's what I know about your heart right now. If you're very excited about that idea, it will be easy for you to contribute to that vision. Right? Because where your heart is, there your treasure will be. But here's the other thing. If you're not very excited about that, but you go, I trust the leadership of this church, your heart can be drawn to that vision if you would contribute to that vision. And we're going to need some contributions. We don't have any firm numbers. If we want to pay somebody to come in, it costs us a couple $1 million to build 4 ball fields out there. But I think we can do it in-house for, don't hold me to this, roughly $500,000. So we're going to need to gather our resources if we're going to accomplish this vision. But here's what's going to happen if we do that. If this is God's will, we pursue it, we follow it. First of all, He's going to provide. But second of all, our hearts are going to be excited about this because our hearts are going to follow our treasure. And I'll just say again, if your heart is not excited about this, but you trust the leadership of your church, you can become excited about it if you would invest your treasure into that vision. Because at the end of the day, it's not about playing baseball or soccer or football or whatever other games we would play. It is about building Christ's kingdom, and that is one tool that we can use for that purpose. As we keep reading through our text this morning, Jesus is going to give us a connection between spiritual health. I mean, it's like I said earlier, like your sleep health is directly connected to your heart health, right? Well, what he's going to tell us is that the health of your eye is connected to the health of your heart and your whole body. And you'll see what he means by that. Look at verse 22. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. So this idea of light is being able to see and to evaluate clearly, okay? And if you have a healthy or a good eye, then you have the opportunity to correctly evaluate your entire body. Where am I healthy? Where do I need some work, some strength? Where do I need some healing? And so, or because you have a good or a healthy or a clear eye, that light gives you clarity, the ability to identify potential areas of concern. But the opposite of that would be verse 23. If your eye is bad, then your whole body will be full of darkness. Well, because you can't identify, evaluate areas of concern where you need to improve your health. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Meaning this bad health is going to get worse and worse and worse because you can't even see it to fix it, right? So at first glance, this section seems kind of out of place because Jesus was talking about treasure and finances, and then we know he's going to come back to that topic, treasure and finances, when he talks about what masters you can serve. Well, the reason this feels out of place is because we're missing a Greek play on words or a double meaning that would have been obvious for the original audience. And this happens because of translation. So first I'll give you an example of a play on words. Let's say you got a bunch of chickens, you love your chickens, someone's messing with your chickens, you say, hey, that's foul play. Okay? And not a great joke, but it serves a purpose, okay? That's foul play. Well, in English, those two different words sound the same. And so as an English speaker, you hear it and you understand the double meaning immediately. Well, what would happen if I tried to translate that into Spanish? Well, in Spanish, foul is ave and foul is falta, meaning you can't have both of those words in that one place. So we have this same issue in the Greek. They had to choose between one of two words when we translate to English. And so the word in verse 22, let's go back to verse 22, that says, if your eye is healthy, or maybe your translation says, if your eye is good, that word had a double meaning that could also be generous. Meaning in the original language, they heard that Greek word and immediately understood that he wasn't just talking about health, he was also talking about generosity, how you manage your finances. And so read it in that way. The eye is the lamp of the body, so if your eye is generous, your whole body will be full of light. Meaning the way that you manage your finances has an effect over your entire spiritual health. Keep going. Verse 23, but if your eye is bad, not healthy, not generous, your whole body will be full of darkness. If you are poor at managing your finances, if you are not generous, if you are stingy with your treasure, well, guess what? Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Your entire spiritual health will suffer. Essentially, what Jesus was calling us to do is this, to evaluate honestly the condition of your heart. Evaluate honestly the condition of your heart. If you are generous, you will be able to see clearly that your heart is in a good place. But if you're struggling to share your finances with God's kingdom, this is not a good sign of the condition of your spiritual heart. So Jesus causes us to ask again, where is your treasure? Where am I investing it? It causes us to ask, what is my attitude towards sharing that treasure? And that attitude, when you're given the opportunity to give, your immediate response shows you the condition of your heart. This is your spiritual stress test or your spiritual EKG. If you don't know what a stress test is if they're concerned about the health of your heart, they'll hook you up to all these monitors and they'll put you on a treadmill or a stationary bike and they'll force you to cause stress on your heart. Because if your heart is going to do something crazy, that's when it's going to happen, is in that moment. And so here's your spiritual stress test. Here's your chance to get on the treadmill. You have the opportunity to give. What does your heart do? If it keeps pumping, keeps moving, and there's no problems, that's a good sign. If all of a sudden it starts jumping around and gets kind of antsy, that's not a good sign. That's what Jesus is saying. That our opportunity to give demonstrates for us our spiritual condition. So if you see this and you go, all right, I get it, Jesus. This is a way that I'm falling short. This is a way that I need to trust your word. I don't want to invest my treasure, but I trust that if I do, my heart is going to change. That's what he's promising. So you say, all right, I want to be obedient in that way. Here's the thing. Life is usually a little bit more complicated than a simple attitude change. Meaning if tomorrow you wanted to invest your treasure in Jesus' kingdom, it's probably going to take some pretty big steps. Some different life change opportunities. It's like if your toddler has a bad attitude and you say to your toddler, hey, fix your attitude. It ain't gonna work, right? It's not like, okay, I just fixed my attitude. No, you think, okay, realistically, if I'm going to fix my attitude, this toddler's attitude, I know it's gonna require probably a snack and a nap, right? There are steps along the way. Well, if Jesus is calling you to fix your attitude towards giving, there are probably steps all along the way. You're probably gonna have to honestly evaluate how you're using your treasure currently. Can you honestly evaluate the condition of your heart? One way you can do that is by evaluating how you're using your treasure. You're probably going to have to evaluate what you're willing to sacrifice. But what did David say when God called him to give a sacrifice? And this other guy shows up and says, here, I'll give you the animals for the sacrifice. And David said, I'm not going to give a sacrifice to God that costs me nothing. Because it wouldn't have been a sacrifice, right? And so if we are honestly evaluating the condition of our hearts and we have this holy desire to make these changes, we got to recognize there's some steps along the way so that we can actually get there. As we finish up our text this morning, Jesus is actually going to turn away from health metaphors. Instead, he's going to have us consider who is our master. Just one last verse, and we're round in third, we're headed home. You get it, sports ministry? Okay, all right. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. All right, this is just a pretty common sense general truth that applies to all of life. And you might be thinking, hang on, I work 2 jobs, I have 2 bosses, there's no problem there. Well, you're kind of missing the context. The language that Jesus is using in this passage is referring not to an employer, it's referring to a master and a slave. A slave does not have 2 masters. It doesn't work that way. You cannot be owned by 2 people. And so you cannot serve 2 masters. Not only is that legally impossible, but emotionally it doesn't work. You're either going to be devoted and like the one and then hate the other, or vice versa. That's how it works. And while this is a general truth, Jesus then applies it specifically to money. You cannot serve God and money. And so what Jesus is not saying here is that you're not either one kind of person or the other. You're either the kind of person who serves God or the kind of person who serves money. That's not what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying each one of us is tempted to be divided, where some days or even some hours or some minutes I'm set on serving God, but then something comes along and now I'm serving money. And he's saying, don't you see that you can't do both at the same time? You cannot be divided in this way. You're serving one or the other, never both at the same time. And in money, while this is true of a lot of different things, particular sins or particular temptations or particular measures of success, in money we have a particular temptation that we cannot do both at the same time. That our treasure can't be in our earthly comfort and in our eternal reward at the same time. The money can't go 2 places. It's got to go one way or the other. And so Jesus is telling us you cannot be a slave to 2 different masters. So who are you a slave to? To money or to God? Well, here's the thing. In this language, there is an invitation from Jesus saying, here's what I'm offering. You can be freed from your slavery to money. You can be freed from your slavery to sin. You can be freed from your slavery to success, your slavery to comfort, and you can become a slave to God. And He's the only good master. And so He's calling us to do this, to devote your heart to the only good master. Devote your heart to the only good master. Again, this is just common sense. We can either invest our treasure in something that doesn't last, or we can invest our treasure in something that does last. We can either follow a master who abuses us, or we can follow a master who loves us. We know what the right answer is, but that doesn't mean it's always easy to do. And sometimes we need a wake-up call. Now, maybe you're a kind of a person that when you go to the doctor, you like them to be gentle and have a good bedside manner. Or maybe you're the kind of person that just needs a blunt doctor who's going to say, hey, get your stuff together. You're killing yourself. And they're just going to be blunt. Okay? Well, here Dr. Jesus is being kind of blunt. You can't serve both masters. It doesn't make any sense to eat a dozen donuts while you're jogging. You can't do both at the same time. It's not going to end well. I promise you that. So you can't do both. You can't be dedicated to comfort and luxurious desserts and be dedicated to your health. You can't do both at the same time. It's not possible. So what is going to be the focus and the attention of your life? Is it going to be your kingdom or Christ's kingdom? Where you invest your treasure will answer that question. And so here's what Jesus is doing. He's being blunt. He's saying, hey, you remember what you signed up for? He said, come and follow me. I didn't say, hey, come and follow me with your whole life except for your finances. That's what we signed up for. We are his disciples. We are his slaves. He is Lord and Master. When he commands, we obey. We sing songs like, I surrender all. But do we really mean it? Or are we actually saying, I surrender all but my wallet? And so again, this is not Jesus putting us into one of two categories. You're either this kind of person or that kind of person. This is Jesus giving us the reminder that we all need regularly. You will be tempted to serve the master of finances. If you are doing that, you are not serving your master and your Lord. But here's the amazing promise he's made. Even though it will be difficult, even though your heart won't want to do it, if you would serve Jesus as Lord, even with your finances, your heart's going to come along eventually. He's going to cause you, grow in you a holy hunger, a desire for his kingdom. And he's going to do this because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So this is a regular reminder that we all need. But this is also, I think for some of us, Dr. Jesus being kind of blunt saying, hey, your lifestyle is killing you. That master you're following, the end is death and corruption and destruction and hell. Stop following that master. Come and follow me. I'm the only good master who wants to offer you not temporary earthly treasure. I want to give you eternal reward. So turn away from your sin and follow me in faith. We're going to respond by singing a great song. It's pretty simple. The verse is, I surrender all. I'm going to sing that a good bit. And then also, everything and nothing less. I give you everything and nothing less. But is it true? Don't let this be an empty promise. Don't let this be a prayer in vain. Let the Holy Spirit begin to change and to mold and to make your heart more like his heart. And trust that if you really would surrender all, if you really would give him everything and nothing less, then he will make your heart like his heart. Father, we love you.